Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money, real estate, and personal finance easier. This is your host, Lauren, and I'm joined today by Pete Reese, president of RealVest Properties, a land development and investment company. With nearly 2 decades of real estate experience as a broker and investor, Pete has successfully purchased and sold hundreds of pieces of real estate for profit over the years for himself and on behalf of his clients. He did $3.5 million in revenue in 2022 with his land flipping and development business, and he's pushing to do 10 million in 2023. Pete's always looking for his next deal, including his longtime dream of owning his own private island. Besides his professional accomplishments, Pete is a proud father to 3 beautiful girls, keeps up with his family by working out and enjoying a vegan diet, and is the 31st great-grandson of King Henry II. Welcome, Pete.
Well, thanks for having me, Lauren. I really appreciate that intro.
I'm excited. I'm going to dive into some of that here in a little bit. But first, I
All
want
right.
to let everybody know that this episode is brought to you all by Steadily Landlord Insurance. Steadily covers many kinds of properties: single family, multifamily, vacant, restorations, apartment buildings, condos, even manufactured homes. And get this, they also cover Airbnbs and VRBOs. If you rent property to others, support this podcast by clicking the link in the show notes and getting a quote today. So, Pete, our goal for today is to make adulting easier for our listeners by discussing a personal finance topic, since managing money is a huge part of adulting. So, today we're going to talk about, everybody guessed it, land and land flipping. So, how did you get interested in flipping land?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I never considered myself a land expert, or I never foresaw myself going down the path of being someone that flips land. I've always been interested in real estate in general, but mostly single family homes and some other kind of related asset classes. But land was kind of never really never really a consideration for me. Honestly, I got into it because a couple of years ago I knew I needed to get back into real estate investing. We weren't doing anything actively for ourselves, my wife and I. We had another business that was taking up all of our time and all consuming, and we were just kind of gotten out of the real estate game completely. So I wanted to get back into it, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I was researching some different models online, stumbled into some people talking about land flipping, saw some anecdotes from people saying, "Hey, I bought this property for 10,000 and I sold it for 30,000," and some different things like that. And I thought, wow, I could do that. I kind of like those numbers. It'd be great to buy something for that and flip it for that pretty quickly. So I kind of went down this whole rabbit hole and learned everything I could about the model and what other people were doing. And I just kind of went all in on it. I sent out a big batch of direct mail. The first month I got into it, I sent out 10,000 letters, and then it just kind of snowballed from there, I guess you can say. Resold our first property in March of 2021 using this model, wrapped up 2021 doing about 1.2 million in revenue and about 50% gross profit margin. So on average, we try to double everything that we sell. Like if we buy a property for 20,000, we try to sell it for 40,000 after all commissions and everything like that. So we were able to do that in 2021. 2022, we ended up at about 3.5 million and roughly the same gross profit margin as well. So, and as you said in the intro, trying to make 10 million a reality in 2023, and I really think I can make that happen.
So that's awesome. So from a real estate investing perspective, is land flipping all you're doing right now? We're not doing multifamily, we're not doing residential, we're not doing anything like that.
Right. Yeah, that's our main thing. We purchased we've been purchasing some long-term hold properties just to kind of offset some tax things,
Okay.
but that's not our main business model. Those are just kind of long-term holds that we've got. And but our main business is really the land flipping, and that's what generates all the cash. It's kind of like any other business in the fact that it's short term. These are really short-term holds, meaning 60 days on average is what we normally try to hit. And so that includes the entire time of our ownership. So we buy a property and close on it, and then we put it on the market to resell it. We go under contract with another buyer, go through a whole escrow period, and then only holding it for 60 days on average. So this is really short-term stuff. There's no long-term holds in those unless we have a property that's kind of set aside for a potential development or something.
And this has been a revolutionary idea to me, because I know some people that buy land, say outside, I'm in Florida. So I know someone that has some land outside of Fort Lauderdale. and he bought some land outside of Orlando. And this is not a 60-day thing. Like his plan is to hold this for many, many years. So I was surprised, and I never thought about it as land flipping. With flipping, you think about it like a house, right? You buy something, you do something to it, and then you sell it. Is that the same concept here, but with land?
Somewhat, we do improve some of these properties in some ways. I mean, generally, the main thing is that we're buying a property off market for an aggressive price, and then we're doing some kind of minor improvements sometimes, like maybe we're clearing paths on the property, maybe we're getting a perk test done, maybe we're getting a survey done, something along those lines. And we put it on the market right away and price it slightly below retail so then we can sell it quickly. So and I'm with you on that. I thought that's what land investing was all about. And there are a lot of people that follow that model. They buy a big piece of land kind of in the path of progress, and they know that one day the thing's going to be worth a whole heck of a lot more than it is right now. And that I'm sure works great. It just doesn't bring you any income in the short term. That's why this kind of model really appealed to me because I mean, it's just short term, it's like short term cash flowing type business. So it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, you kind of use the same money over and over and over and over.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep trying to keep snowballing it as well. And the other thing that I should mention is our portfolio value that we've got, like the properties that we actually own continues to kind of climb higher and higher and higher. And that doesn't show up in the revenue figures right away. Obviously, that's kind of delayed. But I looked at our portfolio values of the properties that we own free and clear, and it's about 2.7 million right now. And we probably started with an initial investment of maybe 100,000 or something when we first started, and then that kept snowballing and snowballing. So um, I don't know where it's going to be. I didn't take a snapshot of what our portfolio looked like at the end of 2021, but I'm imagining it's probably going to grow quite a bit, next year at this time. So
So to do 10 million this year, how many deals is that?
I think it's I think it's probably I don't know how many deals exactly, but I do know that it needs to be higher dollars per deal.
Okay.
So Um, it's so random though because the kind of the price purchase prices and everything are kind of all over the board depending on the area, depending, there's a lot of just different variables that go into it. So I just know that I need to increase the amount of mail that I'm sending out drastically, also increase the average deal size and sell the properties as quickly as possible in order to make that happen. So
So you started with $100,000. Obviously, you have your money machine kind of rolling now. Is this something that can be done with partners?
yeah, and that's the thing. We didn't. I have partnered on two properties that we resold this point out of 100 plus properties that we've resold with this model. But that's the thing. There are partners in this business that will bring all the money to the table. Like you don't even have to bring a down payment or anything like that. If you have a deal, you get a deal under contract, they'll bring all the money, they'll send it to escrow, you close the deal, and then you split the profits 50-50. So it's really kind of a win-win for both sides. As the money partner comes in, they get to kind of just put their funds, their idle funds to use and get a great return on their investment. And then the land investor also gets a great deal because they're getting it like an infinite ROI. Their expenses, their whatever cost it was to generate that deal.
Yep, got it. So you've said the word model a couple of times, right? Yeah, you also said mailers. So it sounds like you're finding most of your leads from mailers. You're buying these off-market deals. You're selling them on market though at
Hmm.
retail. And are you using title companies, real estate agents? I know you said you're a broker. Are you only operating where you're licensed? How does the rest of that look?
Yeah. So we are buying properties all over the country. I'm a broker in California, have been since 2006, but I don't do anything with our business, through my license at all. It's just simply we're buying properties all over the country. We're always buying them through a title company or attorney, escrow, whatever that state happens in that state, and we're always reselling them that way as well. I know some land investors will actually do just a kind of deal where they just have people deed them the property and they give them a check, But I don't feel good doing things that way. I want to make sure there's a full title search, that the chain of title is good, and so I don't want any problems to arise in that way. So that's why we always do things through a title company. It just kind of makes sense for protection of us and the property owner as well. Um, but yeah, so we always sell things on the market, and we'll always work with a local broker. We try to find the best one in each area, and we also kind of tie them into our due diligence process. When we get a property under contract, we're always kind of looping them in and saying, "Hey, what do you think about this property? What do you think you can resell it for?" So it gives us a little bit more confidence that we're buying it where we need to buy it at, and also seeing any potential red flags that could arise. So then, then after we purchase and we close on the property, then we give them the listing on the resale side.
Gotcha. Yep, that makes sense. So you said due diligence, you said red flags. What are some of
Oh,
the weird things that you've come across?
yeah. There are some weird things that come up from time to time for sure. Things that we always send photographers out and someone to actually walk the property, take drone photos and on the ground photos. Recently, this is kind of a standard thing that comes up. We could see a lot from our computer screens, satellite images, and all kinds of data on these properties. Use a program called MapRight, which is great for the land business because there's just so much data that's just there. And 90% of a property I can tell from my desktop, not my computer screen. But going out to the property is absolutely essential, at least someone going out to the property, because recently there was this one that we thought was a great deal. On paper, it looked like a great deal. And we get out there and there's like a broken down RV at the entrance to the property. There's squatters living on the property. There's trash everywhere. There's a stream running through the property that I swear had like a green glow to it. I mean, it just there's just so many things that I would consider red flags and something that I wouldn't want to get into. So that happens from time to time. Other things that I consider a red flag, like if the property doesn't have access, legal access. Sometimes a property owner or seller will say, "Oh yeah, it's got access, and it's just down this dirt road here." Then when we pull the title report, there's nothing deeded about the access. So maybe sometime way back in the past there was some sort of deeded access or some sort of agreement, but if it can't be found, it can't be proven. So that we obviously have to back away from a property purchase like that. So need to make sure it has legal access. We need to make sure the chain of title is good. We need to make sure that there's no big liabilities on the property, because the last thing I want to do is to buy a property where there's more liability to it than what it's worth as an asset. Like if there's some sort of toxic waste dump on the property where I'm going to have to spend all this money to clean it up more than what it would be worth, and it's obviously not a good deal for us. So things like that can come up. I mean, the other things we check for are a lot of basic stuff, like we need to make sure that it's not too steep, that it's not all wetlands or swamp area, it's not all in the flood zone. A lot of things like that kind of come into play. And those are sort of the basics. And a lot of that stuff we can see right from our computer screen. But, you know,
When you said computer screen, I thought you were going
mm.
to say, but the one thing you can't see is a smell. And I thought you were going to go down some kind of weird direction where it's your other
Well,
senses that you need to
yeah.
use.
That's probably true. And you know what? That actually comes up too, because some of these areas, you'll look in the satellite images and you'll see these kind of like big looking barn type things. And then there's a pond beside it. And I didn't realize that. And one of these brokers pointed out to me, they're like, you know, uh, you're probably not going to get as much as you thought for this property, because that's actually not a pond. That's a hog lagoon. And that's a hog farm, and actually like all the waste from the hogs is like pooled in that pond. So the whole general area then really smells. So so that's an area where the smell definitely does come into play.
Okay, learned a new term today, hog lagoon.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hog
Um,
lagoon, yes.
ugh, ugh.
I know, I know.
Yeah, as a vegan, I'm sure that's particularly gross to you.
Yeah.
Um, so what percent of deals then that you get under contract close?
That we get under contract, I'd say 90% of them close.
Oh, that's a lot.
So
Yeah. Okay, cool.
yeah, most of them close. Everyone's, a certain percentage of them, they do just have issues that we can't work past, though.
Yeah,
So,
no, I think
and
that makes sense. That sounds like a pretty high
yeah,
number to me.
and like a lot of the stuff, all properties. I haven't run into the perfect property yet. There's always something that's a little like, I wish it was this, wish it was that. So there's always things that are not perfect about a property, but you just kind of look out for that stuff that's kind of the big deal that's going to be a real problem when you go to resell it.
I haven't run into the perfect property yet. That
It would be
is,
nice.
wouldn't it be? But I
Yes.
think that's important. So if anybody's like out there thinking about how to get started and stuff like that's important. Okay. Pete's done hundreds of deals. He's been a broker. He's had tons of clients, right? No perfect property. So don't talk
Yeah.
yourself out of something.
Even
Don't
really,
talk
really
yourself into it either.
expensive
But
properties, really expensive
oh,
properties, you would think that, oh, this property is so expensive that absolutely needs to be perfect, but they're not. There's always
no,
something.
no,
Yeah.
no, of course not. Totally. So you've done hundreds of deals. Have you lost money on any of them?
I have not lost money on a land flipping deal yet, knock on wood. So there's been a couple properties where I was very close, meaning we made $100 or we made $500, but
Wow, that's really
yeah,
close.
but have not lost money on any of them. So I know it's going to happen at some point. And to be honest, I'm probably pretty conservative. I think there are I probably pass on deals sometimes when I there's a potential to make money just because I'm not 100% sure. And I'm never 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure on these deals that we move forward with. So, maybe if I was more aggressive in the properties that we actually went through and purchased, then, I might have some losses, but I might have some more gains as well that would probably offset that. So I don't know. I feel good about the fact that I haven't lost any money on these land deals yet, but I know it's going to happen at some point, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, nothing ventured, nothing gained, I think my mom would
Yeah.
say. And then if she was feeling negative, she would say, easy come, easy go, you know.
All true.
So I want to talk about goals for a second. So when you started this, was your goal, I'm going to do over $3 million or I'm going to get to $10 million? What was it like when you started?
Thinking back to then, it really wasn't that long ago that I started this business because it was not even 2 years ago that we resold our first property. And I don't think I had a specific revenue goal at first. I think my initial goals were kind of I wanted to prove to myself and my wife also that this worked. Like I really believed in it and really thought it was going to work, but until you start reselling those properties and still until you actually do it yourself, you don't experience that firsthand. So those are my initial goals. I really wanted to just prove that the business model worked, and then from there, I knew I liked the business. I liked it because I knew that if the more mail that I sent out, the more deals I would get. So I like businesses like that where you can just kind of turn that dial up, and it's pretty easy to just keep turning that dial up, and then you'll get greater and greater returns. So
That's
that was
interesting.
my initial goal. So
Okay. Prove to your wife, prove to yourself.
yeah.
Nice. Intermediate goals, 3 million, 10 million. Ultimate goal, private island. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I just threw that in there. I always thought that would be pretty cool. I've had the chance to actually buy properties that were technically islands in some
Right.
of these areas, but not the kind of tropical island that I had in mind, so I passed.
I've seen some of those before too. It's like comes with its own island, but it's like it's just like a tiny little bit of land. But
I
like yeah,
know.
we're not talking like it's got a landing strip or anything like that.
Yeah, this is a rock pile that's 90% wetlands, so yeah, not really.
So in some ways, this sounds a little too good to be true. We've got this land flipping business. You started with $100,000. Probably people out there are thinking, okay, I got $100,000 equity in my primary. I could take a HELOC. I could probably get that going, right? Oh, and then what? The next year I'm going to do 3 million. Next year I'm going to do 10. Is it too good to be true or no?
I love the business model personally. I mean, I think I've had a little bit of an advantage for sure based off of my experience as a broker and way back when, I actually owned a used car lot. So I put myself through college selling new cars. So I kind of learned the car business. And then when my wife and I got married, we were like, well, we could start a used car lot because, we knew, like, I knew how to buy and sell stuff. So I think so that gave some maybe experience along those lines. Like I feel like I'm pretty good at determining what things are worth and what's where the hidden value is. So maybe that's a little bit of a head start and obviously a lot of experience in real estate, but it's really not that hard of a business in the way that um you just kind of got to put in the time to kind of understand how to evaluate properties. And a lot of it with land is actually pretty simple compared to buying a home because you're not dealing with a structure, you're not dealing with unknown renovation costs. You're you're kind of going down a checklist of things. Does it have road frontage? Is there a big slope to it? Is there wetlands on the property? Is there flood zone? And a lot of this stuff obviously you can look up on that software that we were talking about. So um yeah, I'm sure there are people doing a lot better than me at it. And you know, I don't know. I think it's a great business model. As with anything else, you got to really dive in. You got to really just go for it. And you know, but there's downsides too. Like it's not all sunshine and roses with everything. I mean, there's always issues that come up, and you just have to work through them like anything else, and not get too attached to or emotionally involved in what's going on. So I've got this one property right now where we bought it with title insurance, and it was down a dirt road, and we always make sure that there's legal access to the property, like we discussed before. And the title company, said, "Oh yes, there's this deeded easement and everything," and then we put it on the market to resell it after we closed on it, and then we get a letter from an attorney for one of the neighbors saying, "Oh, that's not a valid easement," and things like that. So then I got to hire my own attorney to kind of talk to their attorney and kind of fight it out and work something out. But, you know, it's just stuff, that comes up, and it's not, um, you know, there's always things like that. So I wish it was just like easy, like every deal was, perfect. And we were always able to double our money on every deal, but it never works out that way 100%. So some
Yeah,
deals are super easy, but
that's real estate. There's just stuff.
yeah.
So this I think is going to be an episode in the 160s about for this podcast.
Oh,
And
wow.
been on Twitter a few years, been in the personal finance community for a while. And I notice sometimes that a spouse has to bring the other one along for things, whether that be real estate endeavors or like I kind of brought my husband into house hacking, or somebody brings their husband or their wife into the fire movement, right?
Yep.
What advice do you have for kind of pitching your idea and your passion to your significant other, and getting them to go along in like I don't want to make it sound like it's like I don't not like a how to manipulate your spouse, but
Right.
how does that conversation go, and how, she jumped right in obviously, but so just give us some advice on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question because I don't think I've ever been asked that before, but it's so true. As you know, if you're in a marriage and a good one, especially, you should probably be on the same page with all of these type of things. And if you're not, I know like the way it is with my wife and I, we both got to be on board. If it's something, if it's something, substantial, we both got to be on board with it. And or we're just not going to do it. And then it does come down to the conversation, like, you know I I have to, you know, I I have to be on the same page with her, and she has to understand that, like, hey, this is a little bit of a risk, but it's a calculated risk, and I really think it can make it work. So she kind of at the beginning, she kind of knew that, um, sometimes I come up with ideas and maybe maybe they don't all work out, I guess, but she knew enough that like, hey, some of these things really do take off. And I don't know, maybe what it was about this idea or whatever, but she thought, yeah, we can, give this a try and dedicate some money to it and see what happens. And I think that she just kind of trusted me in a way that I could make it work. And I guess just the big thing with getting your spouse on board is the education side of things. Maybe not the education, but like having them like fully understand what you're doing and what you're planning to do, and maybe showing them resources online where other people are doing that type of thing, and you can point to that and say, hey, here's what's possible, here's what other people are doing. I don't know that I can duplicate that, but I definitely want to try. So
Yeah, that worked for me too. I
yeah.
remember when I was thinking about house hacking. I didn't want to retire at 55, even though I know that's early, and I didn't want to do my W-2 forever. And I looked to my husband and oh no, I was sitting, I was having a glass of wine on the lanai. He's like, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like, "I'm thinking about that house and the spreadsheet and how we'd have no expenses." And he was like, "Ah, fine, all right, let's do it. Like, if you're really there daydreaming about that, then we need to make this happen." But your website is very transparent about the numbers. So speaking of resources that you could show to people, do you want to tell everyone what that is and what you have up?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's my whole goal with that. Our website, turningprofit.com. I do a monthly income report about our land flipping business. And essentially, I lay it all out there, all the numbers of the business, total revenue for that month, total gross profit for that month, how long, every single deal that we did, like what we bought it for, what we sold it for, some notes on each deal, how long we held it for, like all these things. And my goal is to kind of just show what's possible. I think at the beginning I mentioned that like when I was looking into this business model, I saw people talking on the line about, "Hey, I bought this property for 10,000, I sold for 30,000." And while that sounded pretty cool to me, it wasn't really concrete. It was just some comments, on Facebook or wherever I saw it. And so I think my goal in kind of providing this is to kind of show what's possible, and what type of deals are out there, and what people are doing. And obviously I don't, there's lots of ways to invest in land, and I just kind of took something that was someone else taught, but then I customized it a little bit to what makes sense for me. And yeah, it's just kind of a really clear overview of what we're doing. And I also have something on there too where it's the 50 first deals that we did. So I break down the 50, from all the way from number 1 to number 50, all of those deals, and I go into each one and what we did on those. So just trying to be really transparent. And I don't have a training program or anything like that to sell. We did just launch a podcast about real estate investing. So that's kind of my goal, to bring awareness to that. And, maybe at some point I'll have some sort of mentorship program or something. But my goal is to kind of just create a bunch of free content, free training, and then maybe down the road, if there's interest, then I'll offer more of a service related to that. But right now, nothing to sell.
Nice, nice. Well, that's amazing. So, is there anything else you want to add, Pete, before we wrap up?
um yeah, nothing really to add, aside from the fact that if you are going to get into real estate investing, there's lots of different ways to invest in real estate, and there's many great models out there. But it really just comes down to picking one that kind of aligns really well with your skills, learning everything you can about it, and then just diving in. The areas where I see people, newer investors especially, have problems is if they are kind of skipping around to a lot of different things, and they're going to buy this type of property, and then they're going to do this thing, and then but they never really get a full business up and going kind of related to that. And it's tough to really get momentum if you're kind of just doing all these different things. So I guess my advice would be to just pick something that you think kind of aligns with your skill set, learn everything about it, and just go for it. So,
Great, great advice. So, you said the website is turningprofit.com. How else
yes.
can people get in touch with you?
Well, that's the best way. It's got links to all of our social stuff on there. So, yeah, love if you checked us out on YouTube and Instagram or any of those social media platforms that we were on. So,
Awesome. Everybody, you can follow me on Twitter at Adulting is Easy. I'm on Instagram at Adulting is Easy Real, on YouTube at Adulting is Easy, or you can email me if you want to be on my podcast. This is the best way to get in touch with me, realadultingiseasy at gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Hopefully, Pete and I have made adulting a little easier for you.